So first of all, I'd like to start with AI generally is not it's not objective. It is subjective to the data and the way it's been trained. Like I used as an example the other time, the way you train your child is the way they would behave. So the way AI acts, the way it responds to inputs and the outputs it gives is based on the amount of data and the amount of training that has gone into it. So that being said, so for example, we have some small microfinance banks in rural areas, and you're building this model, training it only on enterprise platforms or data. So what it means is there'll be this bias. The way transactions will happen or occur for small microfinance banks in the rural region is completely different from the way an enterprise tier one or tier two, tier three banks transaction would happen in Lagos. So it's subjective to what information has been put into it. And I want to just put it out there that AI would only act the way it's been trained, and it is not magic. It is acting based on the data that has been imputed into it. And that today makes it, when we see a lot of those AI biases, when somebody applies for a loan or for a mortgage or for a job, it kind of narrows them out because it has not been trained to understand that so person could also be trying to carry out real transactions from this part of the world or from this region. So another thing is making sure that AI models are trained on bias testing, trying to understand, simulate, developers should simulate different approaches or different use cases that will make sure that these biases are kind of reduced. As I mentioned earlier, you can't get it completely 100% accurate, but at least as good as 90, 95, 98% trained on AI models and data. So the next one here is, it also relates to what I've said based on the data. We have something called false positives. So what false positives are is in an AI model is when it blocks a real user because it doesn't understand the patterns or the approach that that user is relating. So for example, I travel from Lagos to Enugu and I carry out a transaction. But because I've always done transactions in Lagos, the system blocks my transactions, even though that it sees that all my device ID, username, and all those other things are the same. So models need to continue to be adjusted to reduce those false positives. So that is also where it comes in to understand what is really needed. What is really needed to make sure we reduce false positives, collect that little more extra data, and use it as pattern scoring to determine that this is actually Moshokwe carrying out those transactions from Enugu because he had to move from Lagos to Enugu and not blocking my transactions. So that will also help developers to continue to improve. And another thing, which is the last one I would like to pick up on, is that people believe that today AI decisions cannot be explained, which is not true. For every decision, for every outcome an AI model gives, it's based on the input that has been sent into it. What you give in, it's what it gives out. So AI models should be built in a way that it can be explainable so that compliance and regulatory departments, lawyers, when they are reviewing it for cases or for things related to that, could understand, why was my transaction blocked? Why was my um, customer denied this loan? So you should be able to build and put in reasons why AI models are giving the reasons why they give. Today at COVRYN AI, that's what we are doing, making sure that for every reason why our model says this transaction is approved or this transaction is denied. It gives a reason behind it to say, based on X, Y, and Z factors, this we feel and we believe that this customer is a legitimate customer, and that is why we're approving this transaction. So continue to put that out there, making sure that those three things, the um might one, which is believing that AI models are not explainable. The other one is making sure that AI is subject to information that it gives in and provides to the users. And the other one there is making sure that false positives continue to be reduced and AI bias training continue to be something that AI models will continue to be trained upon. And the other thing is the more data that these models have, the more data that is being fed into these models, the more accurate they become. So that is where this law tech comes in, where we can have a synergy between the customers, the banks, or whoever it is, payment processors, on how these models are being trained. We believe one side cannot just do it. We can have those data, we can have those models being trained. There's no synergy in both sides, and the regulators, like the lawyers in between, making sure that we agree and use those information properly, we can't continue to scale. So, which also comes back to how we're also building at COVRYN. We're building today to ensure that all those things, technology, regulations, compliance, and everything works hand in hand. And I think that is how we could have a more robust ecosystem and a more improved country, based on how we're trying to mimic Western culture, but we know that our cases in Nigeria is unique, and for us to get to that maturity, everyone continues, and every part of the organization needs to continue to work hand in hand.